We have some great case studies here this morning. As you saw last night, three of these were nominated for Best in Show, and Jerry's actually won Best in Show, so that's exciting. So I'll just take a quick minute to introduce our panelists. Diana Littmann-Paige from Marina Mar and the Depend campaign and the Great American Try-On. Jerry Hopkins from Unity with the future of swooping? You'll have to correct me. It's a tough one.
We'll get you onto it, don't worry.
Even with the accent, I thought I could try and make it work. And we have Mr. Lou Dapong from Sinopec and the campaign that you saw yesterday, managing the crisis in Hong Kong. And with him is Lu Tong from Brunswick Group, who will help translate this morning. And last but not least, Lorraine Thelian from Ketchum, who will tell us about the US Farmers and Ranchers campaign. So I'd like to start with you, Jerry, since Best in Show gets first billings today.
She's just being kind. It's actually because I'm hungover, and I just need to do this quickly. No, look, thanks very much. I'm going to try to take you through this. Does this work? Come on, this can work. I'm pushing the green button. Hey, there we go. Okay, so 6 minutes apparently. Going to talk a little bit about the brief. Going to obviously exaggerate the challenges. I'm in PR, that's what we do. Then I'm going to actually controversially sort of hit you with the work. And then, once again, because I'm more of a creative kind of post-rationalize it with some strategy, which is once again what we do. And of course, then finally gloat about the results. So that's all it in 6 minutes. Right. I'm getting the hang of this button. Perfect. Maybe not. Yeah. So the brief's, I guess like a lot of briefs, is just kind of wildly summarizing. Launch, swapping, don't worry if you don't know what it is. I'm going to show you a film in a minute. You'll get the hang of it. Make it famous. I know there's lots of more intricate ways to say that, but bottom line, that's what we needed to do. Get people to do it in their millions. That was the tricky bit, the old behavior change thing, as we call it in the UK. And within that, get the fashion industry to love it and support it. And most importantly, don't do anything to annoy the shareholders, which might sound familiar for some of you.
Swapping means no more waste. Swapping means no clothes to landfill. It means every time you go to buy something new, take something old.
We want to take the lead as a big company to say, come in, take your garments from your house and start swapping.
Today's thrilling. We're here in Brick Lane on this old Truman brewery. They have rigged up just under 10,000 garments, which we've clad up on the walls, we've wrapped around the trees, we've put around the benches, we've even made a dog of clothes. 10,000 garments, which represents 5 minutes of clothes that go to landfill. It's absolutely shocking to think how much we throw away.
If you see that, that's rather embarrassing. So we should stop that. And we should make sure that we create a world for the future where people are going to either reuse or recycle what we buy. You come to us, you're not only coming for your shop, you're coming to swap. And that is, I think, the new trend that we want to set.
This is the big launch of the huge idea of swap drop, which is to go into your M&S with clothes that needn't be from M&S, any old clothes that you don't wear anymore, drop them in, and those clothes will all go to Oxfam.
We've been working with Marks & Spencer for several years, particularly with the clothes exchange. People bring the clothes in, they get their voucher, go to Marks. Now this is an extension of that, and it's even more exciting. We're hoping that this year we'll bring in another £2 million for Oxfam to go out to all our work in the 60 countries that we work in around the world.
Everything will be either resold or they'll be reused, recycled, made into different things. Not one garment will go to landfill.
About a third of the clothes that we have in our wardrobes we don't actually wear very often, so we are able, through this initiative, to be able to take some of those things and either evolve them, transform them, or breathe new life into them.
We have an odd relationship with clothes. We feel affectionate, we feel some sort of sentimentality about them. We go, oh, I used to wear that. Don't worry, you're not going to throw it away. You're simply swapping it, which means it'll go on and have a further life. It's as simple as that.
That was the launch. Essentially, we took 5 minutes of clothing waste in the UK, which is about 10,000 garments, and covered a street. We wanted to kind of dramatically express the problem, the issue. But we also, remember in my brief there, we had to kind of bring the fashion industry with us, and we had to get people to understand this at a deeper level. So we had what we called the Schwab Lab, which was a 2,000 square foot space, which was actually within the street, hidden, obscured by some clothes, and you walked into this space. And this space was programmed for 2 weeks with discussions, events, workshops, basically taking the clothes that we had and starting to do things with them, starting to utilize them as a resource for the industry. We, of course, had a big launch party with lots of influential type people, I think they're called in the trade, to kind of come along and support this and show some solidarity for it, and of course to generate ink and buzz. But really, I think just kind of focusing for a moment on this, you don't see that every day, really, and we all know contrast is good and the media like it, but we needed it to be more than a stunt. We needed it to have some meaning so that as you started to look at it, each aspect of that told the story. Which kind of brings me to the, I guess, the thinking behind the campaign, which is exemplified by these two mustachioed characters, Abe and Marshall, who I guess really are the kind of guardians of our thinking most of the time. So I'm Canadian, so Marshall McLuhan's really important, and Maslow feels really important to a lot of the work we do, in that it seems to us most of our briefs you could summarize as saying, how can we make people happier? Because if you make people happier, then they tend to like you and say nice things about you, which also is implicit in a lot of briefs. And so what we wanted to try to find was a way to give people some social recognition and give them a sense of belonging when they got involved in something, but also to use that idea of sublimation, that shopping could be considered to be a slightly antisocial act, particularly if you're doing it all the time, you don't need all the stuff you're buying, whereas if you're schwapping, it's actually, you're doing something good. It's a useful thing. So we wanted to kind of embed that. McLuhan, I suppose, was about the medium is the message, and if we are talking about clothing waste, we wanted to use clothes to tell the story. And we also had a lot of those influencers that I talked about actually give us a garment and tell us a little story about that garment. So we had all of these stories woven into that launch. But the most, I think, interesting thing that we stumbled across was this idea of alchemy, that if you take rubbish, if you take trash, I think you guys call it over here, clothes that are going to go into the ground, and actually you can use those and turn them into something useful. So you go from base metal to gold. That's really exciting. And that's a thing that people can be inspired by. So that idea of transformation was at the heart of the campaign, and yeah, really drove most of our thinking. Did it work? Yes, it worked. There was an incredible amount of coverage on the day. We didn't put out the story in advance. We literally put the story out at 7 a.m. And by 9 a.m., we had 3 topics trending on Twitter, which is an extraordinary amount for the UK market. We had nearly 4 million social impressions by 4 p.m. We had masses of blogger posts. We had post-launch sentiment analysis that said people thought this was a really good thing. And the cost per 1,000 to reach was about 20 pence per person. And that's a good old number. Martin Sorrell, take note of that. And basically, we reached 2.6 billion people over the course of the campaign, and more importantly, got 6 million people to actually swap. Now, probably some of you are saying, yeah, but sure, there was an integrated campaign, there was other stuff going on. Yes, that's true. So what we did was we paid out of our own pocket for an analysis of where people had heard about this story, and excluding any other form of communication, just PR, we found that doesn't actually say, but yes it does, 48% of the UK adult population had seen or heard about it, and the majority were considering doing it. So there you go. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jerry. I think you'll see this morning some very different campaigns, but they all pick up some of the themes we've heard throughout the week, be it transparency, consumer insights, and also consumer engagement. I'm going to ask Mr. Lu Dapong to tell us a little bit about the campaign for Sinopec and how you managed that crisis.
你就开始介绍一下。
你跟我一块听。
Should we sit there?
Thank you.
You can
That would be
sit
fine.
if you, or you.
Okay.
非常感谢能给我这么一次机会。我先放一个录像片给大家看一下吧。
Thanks for the opportunity. We would like to show you a short video to start with.
On July 23, 2012, a devastating typhoon hit Hong Kong. As a result, 150 tons of plastic pellets from 6 shipping containers spilled into the sea. The pellets washed ashore onto an estimated 61 beaches. Despite having lost its own property and with the investigation into the liability unresolved, Sinopec immediately set up a crisis management team and committed manpower and resources to minimizing the impact of the spilled pellets on the local population and the environment. Senior management flew down from Beijing to help lead the efforts and coordinate resources. They acted quickly to set up a special fund of 10 million Hong Kong dollars to support the cleanup. Sinopec also proactively engaged and established alliances with leading environmental groups in Hong Kong to coordinate the cleanup effort. The mass cleanup initiative resulted in increased awareness about beach cleanups in Hong Kong. Sinopec remains focused on the group's sustainability initiatives locally and around the world.
刚才这个1分钟的短片浓缩了去年8月份、9月份我们1个月的遇到的一个重大的遇难危机的处理的过程，也浓缩了我个人1个月的焦虑、不安和成功的喜悦。
That short video actually showed us what happened last summer in Hong Kong, given that crisis happened. And that's also a period of time I can never forget in my lifetime in terms of, under such a huge pressure to deal with a situation like that.
这个事情刚刚发生的时候呢，由于香港离岛的海滩一夜间布满了洒落的胶粒，这个胶粒就是做这种瓶子的原料。 但是香港的市民呢不太理解这个原料，以为有毒，所以大家呢非常紧张。但是又除了环保组织之外呢，它又没有实实在在的清理的力量。外界呢只能从包装上来看是中国石化的。因此呢，媒体的注意力一度呢全部集中在中国石化的身上，各种社会力量呢也派人到我们香港公司门前抗议。 而且有声音要求我们赔偿2亿元人民币。
The polypropylene smaller pellets you saw actually will be used to produce bottles that can contain drinking water. But at the moment, when people see, what you saw just now, those pellets spread over the beaches, nobody really believes it's non-toxic. And there is this huge sentiment in the public in Hong Kong, saying what's happening. And at the moment, because it's an accident, nobody comes up, and there's no forthcoming sort of admitting of that, because even Sinopec doesn't know what's happened. It has been entrusted to the shipper. But what can be seen is on the packaging, there is a name of the company, Sinopec, actually. Therefore, all the voices are focusing on Sinopec, and you should do something, or even to the extent in the public claiming that they should actually compensate upfront 200 million Hong Kong dollars, and this is estimated amounts, and they are actually, as a company, under huge pressure, and there are protesters to their business representative offices in Hong Kong as well.
在中国石化30年的发展历程当中，第一次遭遇了如此重大的企业声誉危机，也是我个人担任中国石化新闻发言人之后遇到的第一次危机事态。 而且发生在中国大陆以外的地区，这个我感到心里非常忐忑，感到身上的担子很重，压力很大。为什么呢？因为我听说香港的媒体，从来只说，只是批评，小批评和大批评，没有不批评的时候。
This is the first time ever since I took the role of a Sinopec Group spokesperson. The crisis happened, and it's also the first time in the 30 years company's history that never happened. So you can imagine, and this happens in a territory outside of the mainland China, which is in Hong Kong, and where the media environment is completely different from the mainland, means that they will be critical for sure. And it's all about, criticize little or more. It will never be a situation that they will not criticize anything. This is what I was facing at the time.
而且在我们内部意见也不一致。有一种简单的想法是，我们的货物由第三方运输出现了问题，这个责任呢应该由第三方来承认，我们也是受损害的一方，不应该去管这件事情。
In addition to this sort of external pressure, what we are facing internally is a disagreement on whether we should be upfront and take responsibility. A very logical sort of a commercial focused thinking is that the accountability hasn't been determined. Therefore, we were not really sure we should actually be upfront.
但是中国石化一直把负责任的这个国际公司作为自己的一个发展的方向。他2011年就提出了绿色低碳的战略，而且在里约20峰会上也做出10项自愿性的承诺。而且还是联合国全球契约组织的中国网络的轮值主席。
Yep. So for us, we have set about a year and a half ago a strategy of green development, meaning sustainable growth is a key for the company. And internationally, we actually made a commitment at the Real Plus 20 Summit, and also we are the chair organization for the United Nations China. It is the United Nations China Network for Environmental Protection and also weather, global warming. I'm sorry about that. So think of all these sort of circumstances where the company is coming from. There is definitely a stance we have to take.
所以想到这儿呢，我觉得一定要请示我的董事长傅成玉先生。傅先生给我打了个比方，说如果邻居家着了火，你是等到这个法官把责任划分清楚了再去救火呢，还是马上拎着水桶就去救火？
So when I talked with the chairman, Mr. Fu, he actually gave me a simple analogy. He's saying, if your neighbor actually is on fire, you wouldn't actually wait until the accountability has been determined. You would go and straight to help, right? So that actually, gave me a very clear instruction, I think.
我想呢，他是要求我们搁置法律责任的争辩，首先承担起社会责任。因此，我们做出3项承诺。一项承诺，你先说吧。
Yeah. Therefore, I'm very sort of confident to come up with a strategy, and we had made 3 promises to the public and openly.
所以我们的承诺就是在法律责任未界定之前，我们首先承担社会责任，先去配合清理香港海滩上洒落的颗粒。第二呢，先行垫付打捞和清理过程当中发生的费用。第三呢，就是将来责任如果界定是我们的，我们一定承担所有的法律和社会责任，绝不推诿。
So we told the public, before the accountability is determined, we, as a Sinopec Group, would like to take the social responsibility by setting up a fund of 10 million Hong Kong dollars to support NGO initiatives, as well as, if there are volunteers, there is any need, they could actually come to to us. These funds could be dedicated for that purposes. And if, in the end, there is a processes of determining the accountability, if we were sort of ended up being responsible, we will, sort of courageously take all that responsibility in addition to what we do up front.
所以公司的领导层还决策先行垫付打捞和清理过程当中发生的费用，设立了1000万港币的专项资金。
So the usage of that $10 million dollars has been actually actively also managed by Sinopec themselves.
所以这里呢，也可以看出我们得出的第一点经验，就是一个企业要对自身发展要有高度的战略定位，另外关键时刻要有前瞻性的果断的领导力。
We think the leadership and the sort of decisive decision making is important in dealing with any crisis. This is a learning point for us as well.
我们的第二点体会是，企业到一个不熟悉的环境，一定要聆听当地的声音和专业顾问的建议。
A second learning point to share with all is that in a territory which we are not familiar with, we need to listen to local voices and also listen to the local professional advices.
我们和布朗斯威赵女士的团队一起合作，成立了危机的应对小组。对事情非常尊重他们的意见，尽管我觉得难以接受，但是他们非常顽固地坚持他们的意见，最后投降的还是我。
Sinopec actually worked with the Brunswick team and set up a crisis management team. A lot of the time at the beginning stages there were a lot of debate, and in the end Mr. Liu kindly saying he gave up to our suggestions, and in the end it's proved to be right because they are based on local situations.
当然事实证明他们的建议是正确的。
Yeah, despite of those debates we had, in the end we worked as a team harmoniously.
我们第三点的体会就是在海外不同的政治和社会环境下，保持与各界的持续沟通和透明度也是非常关键的。
Another thing we learned is transparency is key in a crisis management situation, and keep engaged throughout the crisis period with the stakeholders.
我们采用多种渠道与外界沟通交流。一是正面的新闻发布会，那次新闻发布会我们开了75分钟。以坦诚积极的态度，直接与媒体，所有的香港媒体接触表态。
Various channels in terms of communications, with the press conferences, meeting all media in Hong Kong, and our first press conference actually lasted over an hour, addressing all questions raised from the floor.
同时呢，我们还通过我们的顾问公司和记者、环保组织以及政府机构呢，保持日常的沟通。这种做法呢，除了说还做，得到了香港公众的普遍认同。尤其是那天新闻发布会开完之后，可以说一夜之间，他们的观点发生了180度的大转变。
At the same time, we also keeping close contact with the NGOs. With the Hong Kong government and also media, throughout these crises, I think being transparent and particularly engaging with media is critical. Following the press conferences that we gave, there are sort of editorials even coming up from very independent Hong Kong press, and to be very positive, in terms of welcoming Sinopec's stance of being open and transparent.
通过这件事情，我觉得我们处理危机呢有3种境界，一种境界叫化危为险，越处理越糟；一种境界呢化危为安，把事情摆平了；第3种境界呢是我们老板要求我的，要化危为机，借着社会高关注度，重新塑造企业的品牌形象。
And as you are all communication specialists, that maybe you all know this, but I just want to emphasize that When crisis happens, normally, you hide, and then that means that your reputation would go beneath where you were before. The best it would be, it remains the same. But what my chairman actually give me the instruction is to bring my reputation even higher, given the high awareness in the marketplace during that particular period of time. So we have to do what we can and taking actions rather than just speaking and make that really powerful.
我们公司和公安公司一起努力，应该说做到了化危为机，这也是我们得到各位给我们的品牌和声誉杰出成就奖的原因，我们也感到非常荣幸。
And we believe we used this opportunity wisely, as proved maybe by the recognition widely, by SABRE actually give us the award.
相对一些老的企业，我们是一个新的企业；相对各位专家，我还是个新兵。我非常愿意向大家学习和请教。
So this again, by attending this function, we would take this as an opportunity actually to learn from everyone and also making friends with everybody present.
谢谢大家。
Thank you very much. Lorraine, you have a slightly different reputation issue, so I'll let you jump in.
I'll stay here, and maybe we could just show a quick video, which I think summarizes the program, and I'll go into some of the insights that informed it.
We set out to help the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance rebuild trust in American agriculture, launching the Food Dialogues movement to challenge the myths and answer questions about how food is grown and raised. We put farmers and ranchers at the front of the conversation, empowering them to listen to, acknowledge, and answer people's concerns, giving them the confidence, tools, and a platform to engage the whole country. We trained over 5,600 of them in storytelling and how to listen to detractors' arguments. We helped build a movement that changed minds and put a real face on modern agriculture. But most importantly, tracking told us nearly 12 million more consumers had confidence in American agriculture, up 10% from the previous year. And the conversation has only just begun.
So you got the 50-second version of 2 years of work. I think I'm going to go back to how we got to this program, because I think it's very important, and I think anybody who's watched American agriculture understands that it's been under siege in the last few years, whether it's from antibiotics or hormones or frankenfoods and GMOs, pink slime, you name it. It's an industry that has been trying to improve its reputation for years, and in fact, they'd spent millions and millions of dollars over many years with advertising programs and pretty pictures, and if anything, their credibility and reputation had gone down, not up. So they certainly knew something was not working. And I have to just say, because I've been in the issues and public affairs business pretty much my whole career, and we have tried to educate people on everything from why chemicals are safe and pharmaceuticals are wonderful and biotech is great, and pretty much very similar results. It really wasn't resonating. And I think one of the reasons we're so excited to be working on this program is I think it changes the paradigm. It's bold and courageous, and it's going to inform the way we approach these campaigns in the future. So with that, just as a prelude, why weren't these campaigns working? First of all, I think most of them, if you think back, are all top-down. You know, here we are, we're the source of all facts and all truth. We have the science on our side. We tell you what to believe, and you should just believe it. And the reality is, as we know, research tells us that doesn't work anymore. And truthfully, I doubt it ever worked, except consumers only had a few channels reaching them, so they weren't bombarded as they are today. Also, consumers don't trust any institutions today. They're totally skeptical. They can't stand government, industry, media. It doesn't matter. The sad part is the most credible source of information for consumers today is themselves. They talk to their neighbors and their friends and their family, and they believe that they are just informed as everybody else. And by the way, we also know they're scientifically illiterate. So pretty much the perfect storm. Today, people want to be listened to as equals. They want to be given total respect, not told what we should believe or what they should believe. So with that kind of as a foundation, we changed our entire approach. And instead, we realized we had to invite everybody into the conversation, you know, consumers, detractors, you name it, essentially becomes 360. We want to listen to you. We want to have a conversation. We want to know what your opinion is. And therefore, we welcome you into this 360-degree dialogue. And dialogue is a very important point. As you notice, the name of our program is Food Dialogues. You know, it doesn't matter if we're right and we have all the facts if nobody's listening to us. And then, of course, something I don't think I need to say, but the other thing that has made this program possible, and many programs like this possible today, is the entire revolution in social and digital online communications. Honestly, 5 years ago, our approach would not work because we could not allow all these voices in, which has really democratized the conversation, allowing us to have equal voice with the activists so that they are not dominating everything. And truthfully, we believe as we invite all these other influentials into the discussion, we actually believe truth will prevail, that our word will rise to the top. So that's pretty much the foundation of how we're having the conversation, the whole approach. And then as we delve deeper into the research, okay, so now we know how we're going to talk, who is going to be our spokesperson? And again, you know, there are the usual suspects that we always kind of navigate toward: the scientist, the nutritionist, the industry expert. Research is showing it just didn't work. And we did tons of research, and by the way, it was Lansky-Luntz. They do a lot of the dial testing, the political dial testing that you see on television all the time. And honestly, we went so deep into this research, and honestly, we believe that's why our campaign is so powerful. So we found the best spokespersons, ironically, were the farmers and ranchers themselves, because as you hear, it's emotional. People actually relate to their local farmer and rancher. They like the whole picture of it, feeding their families, feeding their community, even though they can't stand big agriculture. It's kind of like you love your doctor, but you can't stand the medical system. Very similar. It's their personal connection, their emotional connection. And so you notice we said we trained 5,600 farmers and ranchers. Truthfully, now it's 8,000 over the course of 2 years. And these people are just dying to tell their story. And all that we're trying to tell them is how you have to tell your story. You have to listen. You have to be emotional. And we've heard this before. Tell stories that evoke connectivity and emotion, and that's what we're having them do. And then, of course, the other audiences include mass connectors. You've heard that word before over the course of the last 3 days. Somebody called them food connectors, but we call them food evangelists, which are 10 to 15% of the population, mostly women, upper middle class, children, passionate about food and food issues, very concerned about their children's health. And by the way, they see themselves as influencers. They love to be influencers. They're on blogs, Facebook, Twitter. They want people following them because it gives them power and a voice, and that's what they want. So we see them as one of our primary audiences, a multiplier for this entire campaign. And then, of course, as you might expect, we are certainly trying to reach the food chain, food companies, retail establishments. We are going to NGOs, and we are going to detractors and inviting them in. It's a very important component of this program. And of course, there's a policymaker. Because in the end, you know, the policymaker is the ultimate audience. What we need is the policymaker to have permission to support the right regulatory and legislative decisions that affect the farmer and rancher so that they have the ability to operate their businesses with freedom. So the other part of the research are the messages. And I could come in here and talk about 10 messages and how we got there, because of course we do have many. But I think there are a number of central ones that are absolutely crucial to the success of this. First and foremost, the messages that the industry's been using for years has been, we provide safe, affordable, abundant food. Guess what? Nobody cares. In fact, it had the opposite effect on consumers. And we tested this over and over because it was surprising. And by the way, we didn't like the result. We wanted to say safe, abundant, affordable food. And the industry really wanted to say this. And they were so skeptical of us when we kept showing them. It's like, sorry, look at that dial test. Consumers, they hate this. So it's about, as Ms. Lansky says, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. So we say safe. And they say, oh, you're using pesticides and antibiotics and hormones. How could that be safe? I mean, I know the food I eat today is not going to kill me, but what's going to happen in 20 years? Am I going to get cancer? Am I going to get heart disease? You know, what's going to happen? So that certainly is not working. We say abundant. What's the biggest issue in the world, certainly in our country today? Obesity. Why do we want abundant food? We already eat too much. We're fat. And I hate to say the third world message, which of course the industry has been touting for years, we're selfish. I hate to say we don't really care much about the third world. And we are seeing some changes, which is to me wonderful news, positive news. The millennials kind of have a different perspective and a different value system. So we're starting to see the opportunity again to push that we have to feed the world. That is our responsibility. But that's new. And it certainly was not the case as we started this program. And then we say affordable, and they say quantity versus quality. So nice, but we're more concerned about having good, healthy, nutritious food. So what do? We had to kind of step back and say, we're listening to you. We want to know what your concerns are. We want to hear your questions, and we will open up every door you have. We'll invite you to the ranch. We'll invite you to the scientific institution. We will give you every piece of information we have, because you have a right to know. You have a right to know what's happening, and that, yes, you deserve to know that your food is safe. So very transparent, and the other message that really was crucial is continuous improvement, acknowledging we're not doing everything perfectly. We can do things better, and that is a huge message that works. And then the other point is very inclusive strategy. So we are inviting organic farmers into the conversation, local farmers. We are inviting our detractors, NGOs, because by demonstrating they're open to all of these viewpoints, we gain that credibility and trust that's so crucial. So I'm not going to go into tactics because we don't have time, but I just will give you the three components, the major components of the program. And it is named Food Dialogues. And by the way, you can access it at fooddialogues.com, and you'll get all of this information much more centrally than I can possibly give it to you. It is the beginning of a movement. It lives in a number of forums, like we are doing live forums around the country, featuring not only farmers and ranchers, but nutritionists, bioethicists, biotech experts, as well as, again, our detractors. 2 weeks ago, and I just have to talk about this because we're so excited, 2 weeks ago we actually had Michael Jacobson from the Center for Science and the Public Interest on a panel with us in Boston. He has been a huge detractor over the course of time for food processing and big ag. It was an amazing conversation. I'm not going to say that we agreed on everything, but we found more common ground than disagreement. And that is exactly the strategy behind this entire program. We've done not only access to major media, because of course we have to, but we've done very, I think, strategic and creative partnerships, like with Anderson Live and CBS Morning News, so it is a peso integrated campaign for sure. And then finally, and of course it all brings it all together, we have a robust online presence, whether it's on, through SEO or Twitter or Facebook, because that's going to create the multiplier that ultimately is going to bring in more and more people. And as you see, there are millions of people that are accessing this program right now. And finally, because again, we're so excited and I want you to look forward to it, next year, the centerpiece of our program will be a major documentary called Farmland, produced by James Mole, who's an Academy Award-winning, Emmy Award-winning producer, and it's going to follow 5 farmers and ranchers in their quest to provide safe, affordable food. Yes, those still are the real messages for America. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Diana, please tell us about the Depend and the Great American Trial. We saw some of it yesterday, obviously, with having the Guts for Glory, but it would be great to get some insights.
Yeah. So I am just going to try to give us as much time as we can possibly have for questions, so I'm not going to show the video. And just kind of give you guys a 45-second, maybe minute snapshot of some of the planning that went behind this campaign. So the Great American Try-On is on behalf of the Kimberly-Clark brand Depend, a brand that has an enormous amount of brand awareness, but not necessarily an enormous amount of brand love. Made fun of a ton in the media. People don't want to admit that they're incontinent, that they use Depend. You're running as far away from this brand as you can possibly run in most instances. And with this new product that they had called Real Fit and Silhouette, which felt much more like real underwear, a real innovation for patients who needed it, we realized through market research that once people tried the product on, they loved it, and they really did want to buy it. So kind of building off of that, and almost a very flat-footed idea in many ways, the Great American Try-On concept was born. And born, through essentially an advertisement or 2 advertisements advertisements. And our job as part of the integrated team, and Kimberly-Clark works very, very tightly integrated with its agencies, our job was really to make this concept come to life and real from a communications perspective. And what we found, and I'm just going to touch on 3 quick points from a planning perspective. What we found was we had incontinent. It's very hard to find people with incontinence to participate in any kind of campaign. Nobody wants to admit that. So part of the concept here was to have continent celebrities try on the product and talk about how much it felt like real underwear. And that was a little bit of the surprise and the reveal behind this. What we found when we did testing with patients, and we know this also from an earned media and an earned communications standpoint, was that there was a lot of questioning as to why somebody would do this. It's not believable. They don't suffer from my problem. So charity became incredibly important to making this campaign real. And we had to pull up the role of charity as the explanation for both the media and for consumers as to why these celebrities were participating in this campaign. In terms of finding the right celebrities, we had to have people who could kind of embody the brand and embrace the fun that we were having with the brand and kind of join us in a fun dialogue, but a dialogue also that had some seriousness and some empathy behind it, because that was a very important balance for us to strike. And a little inside ball here is that we actually, for every meeting that we had with the celebrities, we wore the product to the meeting. And we all stood up and said, we bet you can't tell who's wearing the product and who's not, in our tightest of clothes that we could possibly wear. And I looked much better in the product than I did without, actually. And the third thing that was really important for us is, incontinence is not morning, peeing in your pants is not morning coffee talk from a PR perspective and from a media perspective. And we got turned down by national media constantly when we want to talk about this topic. And it's a really important topic in the world of, in our world today. I mean, with the boomer population as it is. And we actually did, try to go to some national broadcast media with the story, and they said, forget about it, get lost, and, essentially hung up on us or deleted our emails. And so what we realized is we had to kind of take a bottom-up approach, and we really used social and social media and, the digital story behind this to build a groundswell of interest. And we wound up, and, as we became a trending topic, we wound up getting callbacks from national broadcast media saying, you know what, this is trending, we're sorry, can you come on our show? And we said, we'll call you. Yeah, we said, we'll call you back, we'll think about it. Hung up the phone, went out to lunch, got our nails done, did all sorts of things, didn't really think about it because, of course, the answer was yes. So, kind of just 3 different components of the planning of our campaign that I wanted to share, and I think we have a couple minutes for questions, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I think just a few quick questions, and then I'll open it up to the audience. We've talked a lot over the last couple of days about research, and both of you have talked a lot about how it informed your planning. I think the question I'd like to ask is how you balance all of that research and data and still let the creativity speak, because that's kind of that fun part of what PR used to be in the planning process, was that kind of fun brainstorming. So how do you balance both of those? Maybe you want to start?
I mean, I think for us, we had to take some leaps of faith with the program. I mean, there were some things when we were sitting in focus groups where, consumers, it wasn't, 100% clicking, and we had to kind of say, we're going to push forward with the creative idea and kind of create some solves that allow us to kind of bring this to life in a big way. And we knew that we had the heart of something that was good, and we didn't get mired down in some of the detail of maybe what didn't 100% click in the research, because we knew that the insight was there. And we kind of let the creative flow and help become a partner in our creativity become a partner in terms of the solve for some of the research. But again, it has to start with that consumer insight and, and really that deep understanding of what the consumer is going to feel comfortable with, especially in a sensitive area.
And how you're going to draw out the emotional piece.
I think the only thing I'd add is, sometimes we separate the process. So you have all of this research and they are mired down in it. And then you have to really synthesize it, and we'll put a new team in that's kind of more the creative juice and see if they can capture the insight, which many times is intuitive. It's there, you just have to find it.
I think, sorry, it sounds really pretentious. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Le Corbusier, architect, Swiss guy, basically said to observe is to create. And I think the whole thing about planning and creative, I mean, Jesus, you know, if you're focused on human beings and what people want, and you get out in the world as much as possible, then ideas present themselves.
Do you have something to add from a crisis planning perspective?
想从这个危机管理的角度来看，做一些市场调研和咱们这个就是又有个创造性中间有没有什么样的一个关系和关联？
危机管理跟调研。
对，就如果要了解市场情况的话，要做调研。I apologize for
Okay.
Sorry. 这个危机管理和调研是吧？
有一些就在危机管理的过程中，你也要做一些社会研究的话，都和创造性中间有没有什么一些关系呢？我真听。I'll just try to. We had a little discussion on that. Or just, if I may, just take that question. And on behalf of Mr. Liu, is that you do need to, you know, in the crisis situation, we need to look at market research. I mean, from Sinopec's particular perspective, is to, you know, understand the market and to be responsive and reactive to that particular situation. You know, to be open-minded as well. I think that is what in relation to their crisis situation. Yeah.
Great. The other piece I wanted to touch on, because you talked about integrating with a lot of the agencies. I know on the that's one of the key points that we've seen over the last couple of days. Maybe Lorraine, you can take that one. At what point do you get everybody else involved? At what point do you?
You mean with other agencies?
With other agencies, with other.
As early as possible. No, I mean, that's the truth. We're getting much better at that. We can't do it ourselves. I mean, we do have planners now on staff, but the reality is, you know, bringing in that whole integrated team is very important. We have a lot of agency partners that we work with, and our best thinking comes when they're involved from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I love, you know, on our panel yesterday, all of our clients said, if an idea, you know, is not an idea that's going to work in the world, in our world, in earned communications, it's not an idea worth doing. And I appreciate that more than, you know, more than anything from our clients, because it's just not worth their spend.
Yeah, I think
and the ROI is not there.
Much more sophisticated at understanding that if it doesn't have PR and social value, then you can't always just push messages.
And they want integrated now too. That's the way they're seeing everything.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit. I know we've talked about, you've said, you know, agencies are hiring planners. Do you think planning should have a function at agencies? Do you think it should be its standalone? I mean, we talk about trying to be as flat and as integrated as possible. Does a planning function help or hinder that?
I think it's very important to have a planning process. I think it's very important to use insight. And I think that having, you know, being able to get to a good place over and over is what clients expect. And you can't rely on, you know, the muses and the fairies giving you the pixie dust for it. So, you know, just like, it's like cooking, really. You know, great chefs, great restaurants, they've got a lot of technique. You have to have technique. You have to think, how am I going to get to this end point? But I think there's an overemphasis on, and I know I'm on the planning panel, so this is awful to say. I think there's an overemphasis on data and on analytics and on planning, and there should be much more emphasis on being a human being and just using common sense.
Well, we absolutely have a planning process, and everybody's trained on it, and I think it's more important than ever. You know, I agree that what you need is that creative insight and then drive it through strategy. But you also had asked something before about planners, because a component of that are planners, and I think everybody has a different approach. Some of them just have a planning department now that works within the agency. Our approach is pretty much integrate them within the agency, within the teams, so that they're all part of the clients on an ongoing basis. And I think that gets us to some very good thinking versus being centralized.
So having them all, it's a little bit that model where you have the talent in the team.
It's a choice.
Yeah. I think we're out of time, but do we have any one or two questions? It's very yes, like, oh, whatever.
Just one small question. First of all, thank you and congratulations to all of you. It's amazing, amazing work. My question is about swapping.
Okay.
And the actual idea of swapping itself. Yeah. How much did you contribute to the shaping of that idea, and
Sure.
how much did you do in consultation with your client?
Yep, very, very good question. So first of all, the idea of swapping, although it didn't have a name at that stage, came from the client, and it came out of a bigger program that they have, which is called Plan A, which is their kind of CSR program, as in there's no Plan B, we need to be good. And so they were looking at this issue, they looked at the fact that there were like 1 billion garments a year ending up in landfill, and they said, we got to do something about this. So they kind of came to us and said, we've got this idea, how do we execute it? And we immediately, and back to integration, we got together with Rainey Kelly, Y&R, and one of the digital agencies. We all sat down and said, okay, what is this thing? And we came up with this word swapping. There was a number of other ideas, but swapping was the one everybody liked. And it was this massive discussion, debate about, oh, it's a really ugly word. Ooh, are people going to say it? How do you even say it? Back to Atalanta's point, And so we were just to and froing. And then actually the client, was great, called it and said, you know what, let's just put it into research. And let's see. And of course, research came back and said, oh yeah, it's an ugly word, but I know what it is, and I remember it. So we stuck with it. Yeah. So that's kind of where we got to. But, look, it seems to me most good campaigns are about everybody, contributing, and the client had a massive amount to do with the success of this campaign.
Probably more of a question for Jerry and Diana. Steve Johnson spoke on Tuesday about sort of the creative process and the slow hunch versus the eureka moment. Tell me, was it for you guys with the creatives? Was it a slow hunch or was it a eureka moment?
Okay, I'll be really quick. I think for us, first of all, creativity is a collaborative process in the agency. We're kind of called Unity, and we try to do that thing, and everybody gets together and has a say, and there's stuff going on in all parts of the office. And where we kind of tend to get to is, we'll usually have 2, 3, 4 ideas going, and then the ones that we keep talking about, the ones that won't go away, and everyone starts to develop that kind of, and yeah, really scientific. We just use the kind of it makes you smile test, And we start telling other people, and they go, oh yeah, that's good, do that. And that's kind of how we do it, which is not super scientific. But.
So for the Great American Try-On, I think that the idea was a eureka moment. It was the ad agency's idea, and it was a eureka moment, and everybody got it and understood it. But turning it into a program was a little bit more of a slow process. So there was a lot of heart and interest in the idea, and one of those, I get it and I love it and it makes sense, but how do we make this an idea that's an authentic idea that's actually going to work in the marketplace, work for the media, work for consumers? That took an enormous amount of integration and collaboration and massaging. So that kind of, I think there are often times where you have this eureka idea and then you have to really work at it to bring it to life and make it real and make it work.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.